because cohort to me has long been something I've wanted in any classroom I teach, from my elementary school experience and up, but I was never really sure how to create that. I am very pleased to tell you that I have an amazing cohort in my class right now, and I'm dismayed to tell you I have no idea how it happened. And so my biggest problem that I'm struggling with right now is figuring out how this has occurred. Last year when I started with ELA level 50, I figured it was lightning in a bottle. Oh, this is awesome. Now what am I gonna do? And then it happened again. And so trying to find the commonalities between last year's very small family knit type of group of 12 students, and then a few more would come in, and by the end of the year I had a total of 20 different students in ELA 50. Started this year with 26, and only a couple of those were repeats, and I thought, well, this will never happen again. That what we had last year was glorious and wonderful, and it will never happen again, and it happened immediately. And so then to step back and go, this is not me, this is not what I've done, this is what they are doing. And so the thing that I've been working on with myself is trying to figure out what those dynamics are and how I can encourage those to happen in future groups I have when they don't do that themselves, because it really does create a learning environment that is conducive not just for the students but for me. And I mean, we take care of each other and we learn together and we help each other, and they meet outside of class and do things together. And so I've been trying to pinpoint things that are working and why they're working, and again, taking zero credit for it myself because I have not done this, the students have done this. So I've been actually fairly frustrated with why can't I figure this out. And then just the other day I went to a session as part of the college campus's back to school week. The Center for Instructional Excellence ran a session on inclusion, and so I went to that, and Justin Biberman, who teaches history, kind of answered my questions, which was really cool. And so he talks about inclusion, building membership, building relationships, not friendships, and building skills, and that it has to go in that order. So you have to build membership first, so it has to be a place where everybody feels included. So maybe I can a little bit take credit for that, because I have always, my room has always been a very casual, come as you are. If you're late, I don't care, at least you're here. Not to go back to the college professor that once locked me out because I wasn't on time to class, and how angry I'm about that 30 years later. But doing that first, and then the relationships start to build, and then they start learning. So I was really pleased that, you know, maybe I kind of am starting to have answers for how this is working, and that inclusion builds cohorts, and cohorts build skills. And so that was, yeah, kind of what I've been working on personally, and then getting some answers from somebody else the other day was very helpful, so.
Anybody else want to weigh in some cohorts in your classroom?
During our meeting, I guess, someone suggested having your students meet a different student, because you know, adults, we like to congregate in the same seat every day, you know, every class. This is my spot, and you know, and so you always have a person who sits right next to you, who's always sitting right next to you because that's their spot. And so when you break into group work, they always work together. But having them get up and go to meet someone new, or has, you know, like who starts with a letter, you know, J or something, and so they get up and they find that person so that they can, you know, meet somebody new, so and work with somebody different that they wouldn't have worked with, because you know they're comfortable working with the same person next to them because that's who they've worked with all the time. And so having them get up and meet someone new and work with someone new can help facilitate and build that relationship rather than a friendship.
One other thing I forgot that I just remembered that I wanted to say that Justin also said is that especially at the collegiate level, and of course we are a college and career readiness program, and 3 or 4 years ago, if you've been with us for any length of time, you remember when we made that transition to a more college-like model, and for some of us that translated into lecture. Okay, so now we gotta throw away all the cooperative learning stuff we would do with children because we're college age, we're college level. And Justin talked about how, that doesn't work for today's students. He said only a small percentage of them actually learn that way. So the way he put it, and I love this, I wrote this down, stay out of the ivory tower and get down in the trenches, was how he put it. And I thought, that's perfect, because so many teachers, especially if they've taught for a long time, I am the great disseminator of knowledge, and these are my subjects who will learn from me. And so, and when he said that, it's like, okay, so maybe that's what I am doing, is that I don't do that. My students play a game every day of Stump the Teacher, and in fact, the state director is going to visit my class in March, is that right? So I'm going to make my students submit their questions ahead of time so that they don't stop me in front of the state, because it never fails. Jennifer was there to do my official observation, and they were asking me stuff that I could not answer to save my life. So, it's not about being the one with all the answers. It's about being the one saying, you know what, I don't know, but let's figure this out together. So when we stop putting ourselves up on a pedestal and we get down with our students, I always used to say when I taught first grade, I was always on the floor with the kids, Well, I still am on the medical floor with the metaphorical kids right now, because I don't want the pressure of having all the answers. I want to be, everybody's heard the, sage on the stage versus the guide on the side. I don't want to pretend like I know everything. So to take that pressure off maybe helps my students build better relationships and better relationships with academia, because for some of them it's very scary. And if it becomes a hands-on, even I can handle this approach, it helps them.
And following up with that, one of the things that we had talked about in our group, a very practical way to do that, just stop talking. As teachers, you're there to impart wisdom, and the idea is that you're gonna talk to your students, but sometimes if you're quiet, they will fill in the blanks for you. They'll get conversations and stuff.
I think of the night that Marilyn lost her voice. She couldn't talk at them anymore. And so when I walked by to check and make sure Marilyn hadn't died, her students were teaching each other. And that to me said to me exactly right. Heather, stop talking. Stop talking all the time. So in our breakout session today, I'm not talking.
So I attended the same session that Heather was referring to, and she mentioned the number one step is, membership, for all students to feel like they belong. And it's good for us as teachers to have an awareness when you have somebody in your classroom who might feel different than the others. Maybe you have somebody who's significantly older than the others, and they just are comfortable to sit in the back of the room, and they may be afraid to participate in a classroom discussion because, I've been out of education for so long, I have no idea, where these people are at, so I'll just keep my mouth shut so I don't embarrass myself. Sometimes it's, oftentimes in our program, second language speakers who are very self-conscious about their lack of English skills at this point in their lives. And so they are not gonna venture to raise their hand or take part in a discussion because, again, they're afraid that they're going to sound stupid, unaware that maybe 2/3 of the class have the same level of English speaking ability as they do. Another session that I sat in at, which was an excellent one, but it also was dealing with the very same issue of inclusiveness and developing a culture of inclusivity. And this was a lady from Texas, and she was mentioning somebody who had somebody sit in her classroom and got like a seating chart, and that person actually tracked every interaction of the teacher with any student in the classroom over the course of 2 weeks. And what came out at the end of this 2 weeks was that there were 2 Hispanic students whom the teacher had never addressed, never called on, never drawn into a discussion. 2. It's good for us to have an awareness. There are some cultures that are hesitant. They prefer not to speak up because of either their a lack of confidence in their speaking skills, in their language skills, or because their culture is that way, is that they are not, it's more of a passive culture. They're not as assertive. It's on us then to have to take steps to try to draw them out. Gently, carefully, sensitively, because some would be mortified for you to call on them, especially for something that might be a difficult question. But one thing that I noticed, and I'm just gonna point out two things here quickly. One is, if you're a teacher who's going through a worksheet or something and you're calling out question, just to the class at large, be aware if it's just one or two students who are answering most of the questions. Don't let that go on for an extended period of time. That's why it's critical that you know your students by name, because you can break that pattern by being aware of who's not participating, calling on that student by name, intentionally call on them for the easy questions at first, so that they have a positive experience. And no matter how they answer, right, wrong, or somewhere in between, do like what Lisa said. You develop a skill of being able to take even a wrong answer and make a positive experience out of it. You know, like she said, okay, so how many of you agree with this one? How many agree with that one? You haven't identified who's right or wrong. So that's one skill. And then the other thing is to, if you just are aware that you've got a pocket over here that they haven't been participating, or one or two who have not been participating, call on them by name. Not just a matter of one person is answering all the questions, but in any kind of a class discussion, if somebody is not participating. We haven't heard from anybody over here for a while. You know, Maria, why don't you take this one, you know, and you can cut off somebody who's like trying to dominate by calling on the person's name before you even ask the question. I've had to do that. Is you call on the person, why don't you take this next question, then you give the question. So, an awareness and an intentional attempt to bring everybody into the classroom discussion. Break the ice.